Well, hi guys. Coach Jerry here at the Protocol Strength and Conditioning in Tucson, Arizona, and welcome to the whiteboard. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 levers that you can pull inside of your training. And to do that, we're going to use an analogy of hiring a contractor. So let's go ahead and get started. If you've ever had the displeasure of having to hire a contractor, you know that there are 3 things that you can get when you're hiring a contractor. You can get someone who is good. You can get someone who's fast, or you can get someone who's cheap. The problem here is that you only get to pick 2. If you get somebody who's good and fast, they're not going to be cheap. If they're fast and they're cheap, they're not going to be good. And if they're good and they're cheap, they're certainly not going to be fast. Your training in the gym is very much the same. There are 3 things you can get. You can train with high volume. High volume is lots and lots of reps, lots and lots of sets. This is your, pop hit, that sort of high intensity training. You can train with a high degree of intensity. Now, intensity for, in our industry, that is actually in reference to the load. So, for example, a 200-pound deadlift is at a higher intensity than a 180-pound deadlift. We're simply referring to how much weight is on the bar. The third thing you can do is you can train with high frequency. So you can train heavy, you can train hard, or you can train often. The problem is you only get to pick 2. If you train with very high intensity, in other words, you're training heavy a lot, and you train frequently, so you're training heavy frequently, you cannot train with very high volume. If you are training with very high volume and you're doing it frequently, say you're doing HIIT workouts 5 days a week, that's fine. Don't expect to get strong because you're not going to be able to train heavy. And if you want to train hard and heavy, don't expect to be able to do it very often. So that's kind of how that dynamic works. Now, I want to get a little bit more granular, and notice I drew a triangle up here. This triangle represents a spectrum. Is it possible to strike a balance between the 2? You certainly can. But I want to cover that here in just one second. Let's get back to these 3 items. Speaking for myself, I know that as I've gotten older, strength is the thing that's going to allow me to age as gracefully as possible. So for me, training heavy is a non-negotiable. I have to do some heavy training because I'm trying to stay as strong as humanly possible for as many years as humanly possible. Let's talk about frequency. When I was young, I trained maybe 3 times a week. Very, very intense. I'd be super sore afterwards. What I've noticed as I've gotten older, I have to have some kind of movement practice pretty much every day. I have a training program that I follow that basically is 7 days a week. Most of the folks I know who are like myself will do generally 5 to 6 days a week. Some even do 7 like I do. Usually that 7th day is more of an active recovery, but that's a topic for another day. So for me, if I take more than a day or 2 off from the gym, I feel like a slug. So to me, frequency is a non-negotiable. So I have to stay strong, and I have to have a movement practice that I have to do pretty much every day, or else I just feel like garbage. So basically what that means for me, I have to scrap those hard and heavy workouts. Now, this is not new news if you've been watching this channel. I've been railing against high-intensity interval training for pretty much every whiteboard video we've done, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse. But going back to my triangle here, I want to talk about that dot that I drew. This dot represents a spectrum. So where you are in the spectrum can also have some degree of impact on what sort of training you are doing. So let's dive into that. Let's go back to our contractor analogy. Let's say that when I was shopping for the contractor, the only thing that I cared about with that job was to get it as cheap as possible. So I drew my dot way over here in the corner. I don't care how long it takes them. How good the work is obviously not going to be as much of a factor if my only concern is price. If you're shopping for price, expect quality to go down. So if my dot was way in this corner in the cheap, forget about picking 2 of the 3. I may be stuck with 1. I might just get somebody who's cheap. The job is probably not going to get done very fast, and the job is not going to get done very well. So I don't know that this is necessarily the greatest idea in the world, and the same thing goes for these other dots. So perhaps there's a spectrum that sits inside here where you can kind of move your dot around and decide what sort of contractor we want. Like, let's say that I wanted a fairly good price, and I really wanted the quality to be good, but I wasn't super concerned about being done fast, but I don't want them to take forever. Maybe I'll have a dot that's somewhere maybe over here, a little bit farther away from the fast, a little bit closer to the good and the cheap. That's okay too. And your training can do the same thing. You can have seasons where you may focus for short periods of time on a particular thing, say let's say it's volume. Or you may have some cycles where you have like peak seasons, like if you're in the last few weeks of a heavy barbell program, where you have a few peak weeks, and you may need some extra recovery time during those weeks, and you may need to, obviously you'll need to trickle down the volume if you're going to do that. So the reason I draw this triangle, this is kind of how I explain it to students, is you want to imagine this to be a spectrum, and there's various places that you can draw your dot. One last thought before I close here. I would be careful of going too far into the fringes. Remember the example that I used about hiring a contractor with the only thing that I was worried about is being price. The farther you go out into the fringes, the more you're going to be sacrificing a lot of stuff. So I consider these dots out here in the fringes to not be the dots that you want to be going for in your training. We know this from experience. We know the guys that, usually it's the young kids that train heavy singles for a while. They're just trying to get as many PRs as possible and trying to train as hard and as heavy as they possibly can, and then they realize pretty quickly that that fringe doesn't last too long. And the same can be said for all the other fringes. Most of your high-intensity programs, they just don't have staying power. The average person sticks with those programs for less than 90 days. So that's my analogy on the triggers that you can pull in your training, how to choose your spectrum. Hope this video helps. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at the information below. Thanks again for watching.